All right, ladies and gentlemen, get ready to enter a crypto wonderland because we have a man, a myth, some people say, a legend, of course, Adam Stokes, joining us on the show today. He's got over 1.7 million views on his self-named YouTube channel and insights into countless blockchain projects. This guy is like a walking blockchain encyclopedia, really. It's very difficult these days to keep up with all the different projects in the space, and somehow he manages that. His insights were actually so valuable that even I made him an advisor to the standard protocol. And let's be honest, it takes a lot to impress me. And so, really is a guy that I absolutely look up to in terms of his ability to look through the strange and epically massive landscape of the crypto space. And I consider him a friend. He's also a media personality. He's a frequent guest on mainstream media shows, all because he's got a great talent for making complex topics very simple to understand. So yeah, buckle up, folks, because this interview is going to get wilder than Elon Musk's tweets. And so yeah, welcome, Adam Stokes.
What an intro. I'm completely humbled. Thank you so much, Josh. I don't know how I'm going to have to top that. So for the viewers out there, Josh has been on my channel many times, and I'm the one enamored of what you do, and so blessed to have you on my channel. So to have that intro from you, a true guru in this space, I'm very much humbled. And I actually forgotten about my stats. I didn't realize I had that many views, but you said 1.7 million. I just checked it. I'm actually up to 2.2 million now. So things are moving so quick in crypto. First of all, thank you for taking the time to look that up. Second of all, thank you for having me on. Third of all, thanks for the great intro. And fourth of all, fantastic to be working with you again, Josh.
Yeah, cheers, Adam. Yeah, it's wonderful. And you know what? One of the things as a crypto YouTuber, I've always been impressed by people that can sit down, because it's not easy. You know, it's not easy to go out there, put your face out there, and be the expert that people expect you to be when you're public. But there's a lot of people that want to get into the space of YouTubing. Is there any advice that you would give someone, starting out in the space of wanting to, educate people about the crypto space? What advice would you give them when they're starting out?
A really good and deep opening question, because there is so much to it. So when I first started my journey on YouTube, I was really interested in mining. That's where my journey started. So I thought, well, I'm going to tell everyone about mining. But then I realized that was a very niche market, because not many people can afford to mine and not many people do it. But then that actually took me on a different path to exposing scams, because in the 2016, 17 era, there were so many scams out there that it was absolutely brutal. But then before I knew it, Josh, I became the channel that all I ever spoke about was scams, and that wasn't what I wanted crypto to be. I wanted crypto to be a place of truth. And then I realized, oh, hang on, that's in fact where I want to go. I want to expose the truth and just search for the truth, which actually meant sometimes, or quite often, I have to say, I don't know. And I think this is the positive, this is the negative, and this is the possibility. And I really search for what could be out there. So to, I guess, answer your question is, the first step is, you have to get into it. So you have to actually start talking on camera. Now, don't go out there if you are a YouTuber who wants to get into this for the first time, or an upcoming YouTuber, I should say. I would say the most important part is probably a good microphone. And even that microphone doesn't have to be the best in the world. But as long as you have good sound and you start exploring what you're doing, it's going to be difficult when you first start, because you're not really going to know what you're going to be speaking about. You're not going to know the format. And there are so many things to learn. But here's the thing. I look at my mates who play computer games, right? And they spend all this time playing a game that might get them a few points that levels them up. Well, if you treat all of this as a bit of a hobby and a game in itself, I can remember when I got my first sub, like the first sub that wasn't me or a friend or a family member, but a first sub that was, someone else. And then when I got up to 300, that was like a massive milestone. And then when you get to 1,000, you can then start offering advertising and earn revenue and gain some income from it from there. But from each level that you go up, as opposed to just gaming, and I've got nothing against gaming, I'm just not into it. But if you look at it as a bit of a game, you start to realize, well, hang on a second, everything is a bit of a milestone in itself. How many views, how many subs, how much money you earn. But the other thing is, once you start engaging with the community, the best and most rewarding part of this, even though it's a long journey, is that I've met some amazing people, some truly amazing people. And, not to blow your own trumpet, but you are one of them. You know, I never would have met you had I not been in this space. I've had the chance to meet Charles Hoskinson, Patrick Bet David, who's got over 3 million subs. I've interviewed Richard Hart. I've interviewed many people within the crypto land, and all of it has been because in many ways, when you're in front of the camera, you become the authority. As long as you're genuine in what you do and you're humble in what you do. What I don't like is people who just are in there to shill a coin. I've turned down millions upon millions of dollars in advertising because I could have taken a deal to shill something that was blatantly, I guess, erroneous or false or corrupt. But so many people do it, and you can make a quick buck from doing that. But the most important thing to me, Josh, is really my reputation. This is my name. This is my face. This is my brand.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get it 100% of the time. That is, I'm not going to get everything right. And of course, I do make mistakes, but all I can do is own them, tell people where I've made the mistakes. But luckily, by remaining humble and curious and true to the cause and looking at both sides, I actually haven't made that many mistakes on channel. But those who do make a mistake when it's really big, this is where it's scary for all of us, you, me, everyone who's in front of the camera. If you make a really bad mistake, as you've seen, we've seen in the crypto land, you do something really bad, the audience won't forgive you, which is why you've always got to try and remain humble, curious, and search for the truth.
Very well said. And it sort of brings me on to the next question that I had, was really about how do you avoid falling prey to the scams? Because it's not just scams. It's like, if you really love a project and you think, oh, this is fantastic, it's well done, but then maybe the smart contract gets hacked and then you get the blame, when really all of it is an experiment. But I mean, I guess that breaks into two subjects, right? One subject is, hey, there's well-meaning people out there who are building an experiment in the space, and whether that's an experiment in economic theory, or an experiment in mathematics, or even an experiment in a certain different blockchain or just technology, that can go wrong. Or there's blatant scams where people are building something to basically rug pull them and get the hell out of there and make a quick buck. So how do you navigate that as a YouTuber that is trying to portray good information for your viewers, withhold a sense of personal responsibility, but also keep that air of legitimacy around you and around your brand?
It's a tough one because it is an absolute minefield out here. You think you're walking along, and the next step, bang, you're in big trouble. So it actually goes back to first principles. And those first principles are, as an investor, only invest what you can afford to lose, understand that all investments come with risk, realize that it's a brutal market out there and anything can happen. Then you go to the other side. So what I do, and this is to the YouTubers out there who are thinking about getting into this space, I made a blanket rule. I don't advertise. Now, that has cost me millions upon millions of dollars in opportunity cost. It may seem, but it's also arguably made me millions of dollars because I've been here for so many years, because I haven't advertised a rug pull. I've looked at projects that haven't worked, and I'm glad you made that distinction, because sometimes projects, they just don't work, just like business. 98%, don't even think about crypto at the moment, 98% of businesses fail. And that's not because, that's right. And that's not because they're bad or evil or necessarily doing something wrong. It's just that business is hard, really hard. Yeah. When you go into the crypto land, because it's moving so quickly, sometimes legitimately good businesses don't work. And then ironically, sometimes legitimately bad businesses take off. And I'll give a quick example. So if you think of probably Dogecoin, it wasn't necessarily a bad business, but it wasn't meant to be a good business. But for whatever reason, Dogecoin went to the moon and has been in the top 20 for pretty much the last 12 to 24 months. Now, yeah, I made a lot of money off Dogecoin, and it wasn't actually because I made a good move or a bad move. It's just because I actually made a move, and I was time in the market. I spread my risk. I'd never invested what I couldn't afford to lose. And a lot of the coins that I've invested, because there's so many, have done poorly, but so many have done so well that it makes up for those that go bust. when it comes to scams, there are so many scams out there. And the reality is, when you've been in here for a time, you can pick it up very quickly. And some of the red flags that I give everyone, the easiest red flag is when they start making promises. You know, this thing is going to do this. You are going to make this much money. This is where you put your money. And they don't actually explain beyond. It's a bot or something in the background doing some magical trading for you that's going to make you money. That's a red flag. The second red flag is that they use a celebrity face in front of it. We see this a lot in Australia, where a lot of Facebook ads actually, where they'll grab anyone's face, Russell Crowe, Koshy from I think it's Channel 7's The Morning Show. They'll grab any celebrity, and the celebrity doesn't even know this is happening. They just grab their photo, put it on a Facebook ad, say you're going to make all this money, and then bang, these people get burnt. So that's another red flag when there's celebrities in there. I think the other one that is really important to remember is also poor English. Now, this isn't against any other nation who doesn't speak English, but the reality is there is a relentless pattern that if the website has poor English or poor grammar, I don't know why, but it's just a correlation that is a scam. So as a YouTuber, you have to be so careful to only seek the truth, which goes back to remaining humble and curious. So whenever I look in a project, any project, I legitimately look for both sides, the positive and the negative. And even with you, Josh, when I spoke to you for the first time, we looked at the risks of the standard.io. And what was very reassuring with me speaking to you is that, first of all, it was your name, it was your face. It wasn't something random with an NFT up in the picture. I could see you, I could talk to you, I could understand your project, I could meet the team. But then you were quite open about talking about the risks of your project. When you go into analyzing a project and they say, oh, no, there's no risk to this, it's like, well, straight away, how is that possible? There's a risk for us getting out of bed in the morning. There's a risk for everything that we do. And that's okay. It's just that you have to acknowledge that risk and explore that risk and actively seek out that risk so you understand it. Where I've been really concerned is where some people get into this space is that they start plugging a coin that they don't understand. They sell it to their friends and their family. And before you know it, it's a rug pull or a pump and dump. And, you know, people's lives have been destroyed in this space, absolutely destroyed. And it's because we haven't really been taught about two parts, I would think. We haven't been taught about money at its core. But then because when I started investing, when I first started trading, I was trading on the Australian Stock Exchange, but trades used to be $500 as a minimum to come into a trade with a $70 fee, and then $500 to go out of a trade with a $70 fee. So straight away,
taxes.
And then taxes, yeah, and the slow time around it. So that's $140 in fees, plus the taxes, plus a $500 minimum buy-in. Very few people can do that. So very few people learnt about trading. Fast forward to where we are now. I can trade 24/7, 365 on my phone from bed with 1 cent. And that opens up so many trading opportunities for everyone, but also a lot of opportunities to make a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. It's so true. Very, very interesting. I think scams in general are going to get worse and worse as some of the points that you made about bad English and stuff is going to go away with a lot of this AI.
Yeah.
And you know, we've even seen already where someone has taken Joe Rogan and made him chill I think it was a penis enlargement pill or some sort of Viagra thing, and it sounded so it was Joe Rogan, and he was talking about this pill, and he goes, oh, but you know, if you just go to eBay and you type in and you mention the word, and it's like the first thing there, and it actually works. And he's saying this, and he never said any of it. It was all just AI generated.
Imagine what happens with politicians doing that now.
Yep, absolutely. It's a very, very, very difficult time that we're falling into. I think the vast majority of the public are not aware of it. I went recently to see my father-in-law, and his phone, I was surprised at him. His phone was ringing at least 5 times a day, 8 times, 10 times a day.
With scammers.
And they were with scammers.
Wow.
It was relentless. And it would just take one of them to get him on a day where he was slightly confused. He's getting older and thinking that it was his superannuation or something else, getting a little bit of data out. I don't know. You know, it's the world with this AI stuff. I think that's one of the most dangerous parts of it all, is that it'll be relentless of people scamming people and making it sound like cloning your voice, knowing, knowing who your family are, and then record, sending a ringing phone, and your mother answers it and she hears you talking and saying. So one of the things we've done in our family is put in a password for all of us. I said, if any of us ever calls, the password is this. If they don't say the password, then you hang up.
It's interesting because I was teaching at the I was lecturing, if you will, at the Australian Federal Police, and I was doing an intro to crypto forensics. And it was, credit to the Australian Federal Police for hiring me or anyone who had insight into this space, because they were leaning forward. A lot of, I guess, like detectives and higher ranking personnel saying, what's this crypto thing? And one of the things I was talking about with the scams is that it's actually becoming a matter of national security. So if you look at, and we're just talking about the money for now. So certainly as AI gets crazier and people are impersonating politicians and military generals and commanders, and oh mate, think about what could happen in that situation. But keeping it at the lower level, if people are getting scammed, I've had some of my viewers ring me up, write to me, they can't ring me, and they've said, oh, hey Adam, thank you so much for the course that you've been doing. And I'm like, what course are we talking about? And they're like, the trading platform that you got us on. And I'm like, oh dear. And it just happened a few times. And one I think about in particular, it was a couple, an older couple. So they don't have the time to recover. And they were scammed out of over $300,000. And it was done in my name. Like that is, these impersonators, they take my logo, they take my name. Someone writes in my comments and they write back and say, hey, thanks for your comment. Contact me on WhatsApp or Telegram. And of course, they're doing this to pretty much all YouTuber presenters. So that's another thing that you've got to, all the YouTubers out there. One of the first things I say is, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining us. But then I say, I will never, ever write to you via Telegram or ask you to contact me via Telegram or WhatsApp. They are scammers. Please stay away. And I do that every video. I still get through, even though I open my video saying, I will never ask you to contact me via Telegram or WhatsApp. The scammers still reach out to the people via the comments impersonating me and say, hey, can you contact me via Telegram or WhatsApp? These people get onto it. They start using this trading platform. That's not even a trading platform. It's just a scam. And they just start trickling hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the economy. So linking this to when I was presenting to the Australian Federal Police, I said, look, if you had a big queue of people with more than $10,000 worth of cash in their carry-on exiting the country, I said, you'd have police storming that place and stopping it because you're losing money from the economy. I said, but here we have in the crypto space, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars being trickled out of the economy, which then is money that is leaving the economy, but it's also taxes you wouldn't be getting. And it's also now a burden on our future economy because now we have to look after these retirees who have just lost all their savings. This is in fact a matter of national security and we're not taking it seriously. And I really don't think it's fair to say, oh, well, they should have known better. If you and I are walking down the street and we're mugged, that's not really a defense to victim blame and say, well, you should have known better. Well, if that is the truth, then why aren't we taught about this in school? Now we're taught about gender and sexuality and racism and everything in school. Those things may be important in our high level needs, but what about money? Because without money, no matter what color or gender you are, we are all in big trouble. And as an economy, when money is being trickled out of the economy, it's hurting the entire country. Now, ironically, Josh, is when you have, dare I say, people like you and I, who are in fact educating people and legitimately earning money and legitimately paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in tax every year into the economy. Ironically, we're the bad guys. We're the ones saying, oh, you're doing something dodgy in this crypto thing. It's like, no, I'm bringing in huge amounts of revenue into this country and I'm doing my best to protect everyone out there. How about you join forces with me so we can take out the scammers, as opposed to putting me in a position where, and this kind of links into taxes, I go on this long rant here, is that the taxes on what we earn in Australia is so brutal at the moment. Well, at the moment, it's getting worse and worse. You've got your income tax, your business tax, your GST, you've got everything that you're doing in the background with rates and mortgages and land tax and so forth. Now, I've got no issue with
and then you have inflation.
Oh, and then inflation. Don't get me started on that. That's a hidden and brutal tax that you can't even claim in itself. That's the worst tax because it's something unless you know what you're looking at. You can't see, but you certainly can't claim against it. But
Mm.
I mention that only because there are many nations out there that are saying, well, hang on, we're embracing this crypto thing. If you come over here, there's no tax. You can spend your money here, and that money will go into our economy. And sure, the taxman will get it through a goods and services tax or a VAT tax. But you're actually getting a lot of capital flight from a lot of these Western worlds, particularly the United States, because they are brutal with their people. And a lot of very good businessmen and women in America who are in the crypto space, and we can see it with Coinbase, we can see it even with Binance US, they're all just exiting, and they're taking this innovation and money with them.
Yeah, we saw it early on back in the day with Bitcoin when the British put VAT on Bitcoin and then took it straight away off after a month because they realized the capital flight was huge.
Yeah.
People were just leaving. And they thought, well, let's do it in a more clever way by just, regulating the heck out of it. But that's
printing money.
another story. Or printing money. Yeah, it's very, very interesting, and I think it's one of those points, about warning people about scams that I think is really important, because it doesn't matter how many regulations governments can put on Bitcoin to try to stop scammers. And by the way, most regulations aren't there to stop scammers. They're there to stop money laundering, whatever that means. It's some vague term, which means really nothing. And they say terrorist financing, which barely happens. Like, it's so tiny. It's probably just so insignificant. And there's been studies about that. It's not just me saying that. There's been studies that have been put out by very good journals about the amount of money that goes to terrorist financing within the crypto space. It's absolutely tiny. It's probably growing because crypto is becoming bigger. But what the real concern is the millions of people getting scammed every year, and this is the elderly.
Yeah.
And you cannot regulate against this. The only thing you can do is educate against this. And the Australians have done a very good job. Like, in the 80s, it was totally normal to drink and drive. It was totally normal. You'd have a few drinks, you'd drive home. Hopefully you'd get home. If not, you'd crash and either, hurt yourself very badly or kill yourself, or even worse, kill somebody else. But over the years, they've put so much money into marketing the anti-drinking and driving campaign that now people will say, Josh, you're not going to drive at all, are you? Like, you've had a drink. And I'll be like, no, I'm not driving. I'm going to get a tail, leave my car here, getting a taxi. But people will call you out, because they've been so educated. And I guess in a way you could call it propaganda, but it's government messaging for many, many years about what it is. Now, in terms of scams, we need money being put in, either from the private sector or wherever that comes from. Rather than regulation, we need constant messaging. This is a scam type. If you get a call that is this, and this, hang up. If it sounds like this, hang up. If it's, there are so many ways of going around this and talking about the attack vectors on you, on your parents, on your, on you, on your children even. But generally, there's so many of them, but they're generally of one flavor or two, and there's very strong psychological tricks that they use by putting authority figures in place. You'll say, they'll say, this is a sergeant from I'm over in Iraq, I'm very lonely, using the love scam, these sorts of things. But these are vectors that you can look out for if you know what you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to get scammed, and that's very, very frightening moving forward. And especially, like I said, with a lot of these AI tools that are coming out, it's extraordinary. And once GPT turns truly autonomous, and it's already out there actually. There's an open source repo where it's called Auto GPT, and you can already fire that up and just get ChatGPT working, writing emails for you, sending emails for you, researching the best way to do X, Y, Z. It then spawns multiple GPTs to go off and do other things, and it'll just keep on going things. It'll ring up, I don't know, a lab to get a DNA test done. It'll it could do whatever you can do on a computer. rather than a human brain doing it, it's GPT doing it. So once you give it a command like try to get as much money out of anybody you can or whatever, using, whatever it is, I just don't want to know how many times my father-in-law's phone is going to ring more than it already does.
You maybe think about education. So the irony is, first of all, I agree with you entirely. We have, the government has, we do, because it's our tax dollars. So we are, the government should represent the people. And certainly the people funds that government. Absolutely, there needs to be money put into the education around looking for scams. But of course, we take it a step further. We need to put education into money. Most people want to, look, let's face it, most people want to get rich. They want to get rich because they don't want to work and they don't want to worry about money. And look, fair enough, that's human nature. The path of least resistance. If I don't have to plow the fields and I can sit in an air-conditioned office and watch Netflix or play games and earn even more money, then it's reasonable that humans will go towards that path. And that's why when they hear someone call up on the phone and say, hey, just give us a little bit of money and I'll make you lots of money, they're really playing on that emotional human side of us. And unfortunately, as we spoke about in our last interview, ChatGPT and AI is going to be able to pick up how to exploit humans, because they're going to be able to tap into every single psychological book and hypnotist book and all these books and this knowledge bank that can actually draw people in, whether it's through greed or romance or sex or drugs or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. We're all so fallible. But where I take it a step further, of course, is that if people truly understood money, and I don't know if this is the reason why, but Henry Ford said, I'm going to try to quote him very poorly, paraphrase something along the lines of, if people understood how the fiat system works, surely there'd be riots in the street the next day. Which means that we don't know money, because if we really knew money, people would riot, because people don't realize that money is the biggest, and when we talk about money, we're talking about fiat here. It is in fact the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of humanity. Now, the banks and the financial systems are very quick to point their finger at Bitcoin and say, oh no, that's a scam. And it's like, well, actually, at least we're backed by something. We're backed by scarcity, energy, and trust. You are backed by violence and a scam. And this facade, and when we look about, what they're doing with trying to keep inflation down by fiddling around with interest rates, anyone who's got half an understanding of economics knows that the true problem is printing fake money. Doesn't matter what you do with the interest rate. If you keep printing unlimited fake money that is linked to nothing, prices are going to go up. There's going to be bigger wealth gaps. The rich are going to get richer, and the middle class and lower class are going to get poorer and poorer. And that's where we are now. All fiats collapse. And we've kind of got this perfect storm in the sense that people are getting poorer now. They can feel it. They can feel that their money's not going as far. They may not necessarily understand the mechanics behind it, but they know that they're getting less for what they were before. Groceries have gone up. Rent has gone up. Fuel has gone up. Everything has gone up except for their wage. So they may not necessarily understand it, but they can certainly feel it. Then at the same time, we've got this new fandangle thing called crypto coming in, and they hear about an 18-year-old kid getting 4 Lamborghinis off a $100 investment 5 years ago. And they're like, well, I want to do what that kid does. Then throw in the scammers. And you've got, unfortunately, this perfect storm of mum and dad, grandma and grandpa, and even the young person getting that phone call, not understanding how it works, hearing about Jono who got rich quickly. They don't get money. They put their, and they've never invested before, because that was the other thing. They've never invested before. So when they hear about their first investment, they go all in and they lose everything. It's tragic.
It's tragic. There's no better way to say it. It really is Shakespearean level tragedy. But I just want to lift it up to a little bit, and that slant of conversation of people just coming in and losing everything on a shitcoin somewhere. How do you go about? What do you look for in a blockchain project, in a crypto project, when you're looking through the vast forest of everything from scams to really great projects to something in the middle to experiments to new ideas, instead of running directly to the first one? What do you look for, Adam?
Nice pivot, Josh. Let's get into some good stuff now. Okay, so it's getting harder because there's over 22,500 cryptocurrencies now. But again, you go back to first principles. What is the problem, and how is this coin the solution? So first of all, what is the problem statement? Where is the gap in the market? Where is the gap in society or technology or the industry or somewhere where this coin or this company has identified this is a problem and this is a solution? That's the very first part. Now, it's not just that, because what's interesting in crypto at the moment is that there's kind of three coins. You've got a dumb coin, if you will, that's Bitcoin. And I love Bitcoin, so I'm not saying it's dumb. I'm saying it's dumb in the sense that it's a very simple coin. You know, it's a store of value, a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and the most secure global payment system in the history of humanity. Some people find that boring, but no, that's the foundation to everything that we're doing here. It's the first, it's the biggest, it's the best. And even if people don't believe me, look at the market cap, look at the price, look at the dominance on the market. All those numbers show us that it's the best at what it's doing. And many people have tried to compete with it, whether it's Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Black, Bitcoin SV, even Litecoin to an extent. I like Litecoin, and I think Litecoin and Bitcoin will coexist. But essentially, Bitcoin has really marked its territory, and it is what it is in that sort of dumb coin space. Then you've got these smart coins. Now, of course, Ethereum is probably the most known. It's the second biggest market cap. It is the biggest smart coin out there. So many coins have built on top of it. And it's arguably, if Bitcoin is the gold to the digital space, I argue that Ethereum is the oil to the digital space.
I thought you were going to say, I thought you were going to take Charlie Lee's Litecoin.
No, Charlie Lee is the silver in the crypto space. So Bitcoin's gold, Litecoin's silver, but Ethereum is the oil, you know. And as you know, Josh, when you're working in this space, whether you like Ethereum or not, there's so many times that you have to buy Ethereum because of the gas fees. And that's just like whether you like oil or not, or petrol or not. If you've got to go from point A to point B, you've got to put fuel in the car. So that's why Ethereum is kind of so spectacular in that sense. Then we're getting into this new space, which would arguably be the AI space. Now, of course, there's iterations of everything that we can do on these three coins: a dumb coin, a smart coin, and an intelligent coin. But they are, in my opinion, and I'm actually going to reverse the question after this to you, those are kind of the three main areas I look at. You've got a problem that needs to be solved. Which kind of area is it going in? And then you move on to, well, what's its competition? So when people come and say, this is going to be the next Bitcoin, it's like, well, that was the argument in kind of 2014, 15, 16. Then over to the 2017, 18 cycle, it was really the ICOs for what was going to be the future something. Then we went into the next cycle. It was really the competition for which was going to be the next Ethereum. And I know I didn't know, but I put most of my money in the safest bet. Now, many people go, well, Adam, why would you put money in Bitcoin when it can only do a 10x or a 20x over the next 50 years? And I'm like,
only.
Yeah, exactly. First of all, I've been in property for pretty much my whole adult life. If I could get 20x on any of my properties over an entire lifetime, I would be laughing. And if you look at the stock exchange as an example, if you can get 3 or 4%, or about 6% on average, once you take out your taxes and everything, and your wins and your losses, a 6% win, 6 to 12% in in a traditional market, that's a pretty good year. Mate, in crypto, I'm doing that. I'm doing that in a few months. And in a bull market, I'm doing it in a day or an hour. So ultimately, when it comes to risk versus reward, so many people are only focused on the reward. They're like, well, I only want a coin that's going to do 1,000,000x or 10,000x or 100,000x. I say, well, look, that's a great reward, but the risk for that is immensely high. Whereas if you look at Bitcoin, I would argue, and this is not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor or planner, all investments come with risk. That statement aside, Bitcoin is pretty secure. If you look at it, especially on a log chart, it has done nothing but go up for the last 12 years. Yes, there's been years that it's pulled back, but compared to pretty much every other market, especially fiat, it's only going one direction, up and to the right. Away she goes. Now, when you look at something like Ethereum, if you had got in early, I think you're looking at several thousand X on your money there. But then you get into these crazy altcoins that can do 100,000x, but the risk is so high, which ultimately leads to the last thing I'm looking at, along with other parts, I guess, is actually the community. The community in a crypto is so important. But this is where you spoke about AI before. It's so dangerous with AI because sometimes you're looking around a coin and you say, well, how is this thing going to work? the reality is, if it has a really strong community behind it, that's a lot of people, whether we like it or not, who are putting money into that coin and holding their positions. So that you see it with Bitcoin, a lot of people invested, they held their position, big companies, big banks, institutions, individuals, they're putting their money in, they're holding it. That is a massive community behind that coin. Then we look at Ethereum. You've got the Ethereum Foundation itself, but then everyone who's built on top of or around the Ethereum network, whether they're directly involved with Ethereum or reliant on Ethereum, that's a massive community. Then you might look at the XRP army as an example. That's a coin that sort of sits on a little bit of the side because, I mean, that's a whole video in itself. But when you look at the XRP army, as we call them, that's a very strong community. Some very rich people and very powerful in that will not budge in their position, even when it's being attacked by the SEC, even when it didn't break out of its channel or lows of the last cycle, whilst all the other coins were breaking out high into the right this cycle. XRP wasn't. The community behind that has kept that coin in the top 10 for so long. So this is why community in crypto is so important. And you can even see it with coins like Hex, a coin that was smashed by so many people who said this is going to be a scam. Well, the community behind that was so strong. It's never been hacked. It's never had any downtime. And that's done 10,000x, 10,000 times your money in less than 3 years. So
Wild.
If you find a good community and you realize that community is not a bot and not AI, that actually improves your chances of winning as well.
Yeah, and that was sort of where I wanted to ask next. Is you mentioned the problem, the solution, you mentioned the community, but OneCoin, for instance, was saying we're the next Bitcoin. It's better, it's smarter, yet it was a scam. Like, how do you see the scams through this problem? Like, let's say you found a project, got a great solution, I don't know, ticketing, and you think, okay, there's big problems there, there's good solution, it's got a good team, and it's got a good community. I think it's got a good community. How do you know that they're not going to rug pull, or they're not going to, or it's not an outright scam, or that? How do you deal with that?
The truth is, Josh, you don't. You can pick up a lot of red flags, you can do your analytics, and you can look at it. And I'm glad you mentioned OneCoin, because that's a fascinating case study, isn't it? Like, think about how many people were behind it, big people as well, with big money in there. The way I would have approached that is you drill right down. You say, yeah, but where does the money come from? And because remember, I wrote a book, so one of my books, 28 Pro Trader Tips, The Art of Trading. And in one of my chapters, I speak about, for everyone's win, someone else has lost. And it's essentially the 90-90-90 rule. When we're talking about trading specifically, 90% of traders will lose 90% of their money within 90 days. It's that brutal. But it's those 10%, because the money doesn't just disappear. When they say on the news, billions of dollars were wiped off the stock exchange, but it didn't just disappear. It went to someone. Someone made that money. So when you actually drill down into these projects and say, yeah, but where are the profits coming from? Now, if the founder, or you'd have to say the founder, because sometimes the community is a little bit ignorant. They get so caught up in the hype around it, they don't actually know themselves. But if the founder tries to hide it, like, for example, let's look at Celsius as an example. So Celsius was a lending platform that went bust. In theory, that should have worked. It should have worked because on paper, what they were doing made sense. You locked up your collateral, you borrowed against that, they lent out that at an interest rate. People who bought the coin had access to some of those returns, and they were operating like a bank really should, in the sense that people were centralizing the money, they were lending out part of that money, maintaining a good collateral pool, and there was interest charged for those who were lending it and given to those who were putting up that collateral. That should have worked. Where it went wrong is that humans exploited it and they didn't do what they said they were going to do. You might look at the US dollar as an example. It was going to be linked to gold. Well, it wasn't. We won't print too much. Well, they did. We won't weaponize it. Well, you actually did. So the human side of it broke the rules, which is like why I like Bitcoin so much, because there is no human intervention as such. They've written the code is locked in, it is what it is. You can see it, it's transparent, open, immutable. Then you go the other way, Josh. Some businesses, actually, I'll give another quick example. Luna was a good example of that wasn't going to work. And the reason why that wasn't going to work is because you could see that there wasn't enough collateral there. And when Do Kwon was actually asked about it, how is it that you're doing this? He actually got defensive and insulted the interviewer And he did that many times. And that was a huge red flag, because when you're the founder of a company, you don't need to insult someone who's asking you questions about it. You give answers to those questions. He didn't. He's now on the run. I think they actually arrested
Oh,
him.
you got busted.
They got him. They got him. Yeah, he was on the run and they got him. And
In
he should
Honduras.
rightfully go to jail for a long time. Then we go to FTX as another example. So FTX, in theory, should have worked, but they were just getting too big for their boots. They were too cocky. They were too young, and it just didn't feel right. I never got into FTX. I never even traded with them, even though I was offered advertising deals with them. Go back to first principles. I don't advertise. So I never got caught up on that. There are many red flags. Sometimes it's a gut feel if you've just been in the industry for so long. But here's the thing. Sometimes a company does everything right, but it still just goes bust. Sometimes you think, no, actually, this should work. It will work. Everything's right about it. But then the market just doesn't absorb it. So it's so hard out there. And as I mentioned, when I first started my channel, it was first mining and then it got into scams. And it was a lot easier to spot scams years ago. It's getting a lot harder now because, you know, the English is getting better. They're emulating better sites. You've got more people coming in. There's more money coming in. It's moving quicker. And as a result, you would think that after so much time, we get some industry experience. But when it comes to scams, you really have to question yourself. You say, I love this coin. So then I actively go out and I seek why it's not going to work. And I'll take Bitcoin as an example. Why wouldn't Bitcoin work? And the only argument I could get from Bitcoin, first of all, was the banks are going to stop it. Well, that didn't really work. And then the governments are going to stop it. It's like, well, the governments can't shut down the internet. And then it's like, well, it's going to be hacked. It's like, well, the more you hack it, the stronger it will try to hack it, the stronger it gets. And we've got 13 years of running time now. And then all it really came to was like, it's going to be too slow. And it's like, well, it's still quicker than the banking system when I'm doing international exchanges. And you've got layer 2 solutions. And it's getting faster and people are still using it. So even when I actively sought to find the cracks in Bitcoin, I couldn't find it. But when you go into other coins, if you actively seek to try and find the cracks, you'll probably find them. But even then, sometimes you just got to roll the dice. Because like Dogecoin, as an example, I mentioned that Dogecoin wasn't a scam, but it was a joke. And even the founders said, this is a joke.
This is a joke, Jackson. I mean, he literally, he didn't like crypto and he thought he'd make a joke coin out of it. He didn't even end up holding any of it, so he didn't make any money from it.
Oh, really?
No.
I missed that part. Can you imagine?
I know, Jackson Palmer. But you know, I was lucky also to miss out on the FTX disaster purely because I was pissed off with them. The whole time I was pissed off with them because they took my favorite Blockfolio app. They bought Blockfolio and then they started slowly converting it into a trading app. And like, I just want my my portfolio here. It was a really nice app, and they took it. So I was.
You know why I didn't work with FTX and Celsius as well? Because when I wrote to them, they never got back to me. And so that's a red flag in itself. That's something for the viewers out there. So, you know, on one hand, I'm a customer, right? So I'm like, hey, I'm a customer, give me something back. Now, of course, I can't do that with Bitcoin, but I can look at an open source blockchain. So, you know, I can see what's happening. But when I'm working with closed companies, I can't. So I have to talk to them. But on the other hand, besides being a customer, I actually wrote to them and said, hey, look, I'm a YouTuber. I've got all these views. I've got all these subs. I interview all these people. Can we talk? And I would not have been offended if they said, Adam, we were very honored. Thank you so much. Sorry, we're too busy. I would have said, cool. But I couldn't even get a reply. Could not even get a reply. I couldn't get a reply as a customer, and I couldn't get a reply as a YouTuber. So if you're not going to talk to me, I'm not going to work with you.
And you know, not doing interviews where you can ask some of the tough questions is hard. And I remember when we first launched Vaultoro, you know, Tone Vase also started off by doing basically exposing scams in the space. And I said, Tone, interview us, you know. And he said, Josh, I'm going to be harsh. I said, yeah, be as harsh as you want. Pick holes in us. I don't care. Like if there's something that you find. And he had to dig so deep in our terms of use and pick on the weirdest little things.
Beautiful.
Because he just couldn't fight, because it was just, this is the business. I mean, we're running a simple business here. You know, you buy gold with Bitcoin and you sell gold back for Bitcoin. It was pretty simple. But yeah, I was really lucky with that FTX thing. Just you know, I just pissed off with them that they took my Blockfolio.
if I may, just when it comes to good on you with Tony Vay's getting him to question you, because it's like when people question me about Bitcoin,
Yeah.
if they're just going to say Bitcoin's dumb because you're dumb, it's like I don't really have the time, because I've got too much stuff to do. And if you want to learn, I'll teach you. But if you're just going to sit there and say you're dumb because Bitcoin dumb, it's like, go for it, mate. Spend your life in fiat and look at my tax return compared to yours, and we'll leave it at that. But when people actually say, no, I want to understand, but this just seems wrong and that seems wrong, I'll give them all the time in the world. And the reason is because I'm actually, although I'm educating them, you know what I'm really doing, Josh? I'm actually testing myself. I'm looking for a question that I haven't asked myself. I'm looking for a gap in my own understanding. And in my journey in Bitcoin, which is, what am I up to now, 8 years or something, in the early days when this happened, there were lots of gaps, because that's how, what's this proof of work? And I'll be like, something about using energy. And then you go along and say, well, what if there's a 51% hack? Now, that was in the past. That thing is, you'd be crazy to try and do that now. It costs a fortune to get half a Bitcoin, and even then it would be thrown off the chain. And all of these questions in the past where they really exposed it, I'm like, if I ever found a gap, I'm like, that's what I've got to research. And it gets to the point where you invite debate. And even when I interviewed you, into the viewers out there, and I'll say this on camera, the first time I met you, Josh, I said, the idea of this interview is to promote us both in a positive light. I said, but I will be asking about the risks of your projects. And you're like, yep, no worries. And I even recall saying, is there anything you don't want me to ask you about? And you're like, no, go for it. And you know what? Charles Hoskinson did the same thing. And Richard Hart, all of these, I said, and I do it as a matter of courtesy. I say, I'm not a shock jockey. I'm not here to insult anyone. I'm just looking for the truth. But you're my guest. You're in my house. I want to make you feel comfortable. Is there anything you don't want me to explore? And all of you guys are like, no, ask me anything. And even when I offer questions in advance, they're like, no, don't worry about it. Just ask me on camera. And that for me is like, cool, I want to talk to this guy.
Yeah, I mean, especially like I've always said, I don't want to give journalists, I don't want to give them barriers, that's stopping them to finding issues that they might find. Maybe they'll find something that I haven't even thought about, like, I don't know, some tokenomic issue, and I'll be like, oh wow, yeah, I didn't think of that. Let's explore that further. And
you can see as a society how much dumber we're getting if you shut down debate. This whole shutting down debate, I noticed actually on there's some news channels. I rarely watch the mainstream news because it's just so corrupt and distorted. But there was one pattern I did pick up the other day. Now, this might be controversial to some, but I put it out there to everyone. Has anyone noticed that on the left stream medias on YouTube, they block comments, but on the right stream, that on the right side of media, they don't. So leftists will shut down the comments,
which is very fascistic, by the way.
Exactly. And whilst they're pointing at others, very well said, whilst they're pointing at others saying you're fascist and we're about free speech. Yet on their news channels, on YouTube and all social media, pretty much, they block comments, but on the right, they don't. And, no matter who you are, left or right, you have to ask, well, why is that? Why does one side open the floor to debate, but the other one shuts it down? And then it leads to, well, what's one side hiding and what has one side got nothing to hide? And look, it doesn't matter what side of politics you're on. You have to ask those questions. Why can't we ask questions? Why can't we leave comments? And if you can't leave comments or ask questions, I would suggest the person has something to hide.
Yeah, and before you think, oh well, they're just getting a storm of right wing radicalized comments. Well, I'm pretty sure on the right side they'll be getting massive extremist left view storms.
Yeah.
So
counter an argument with a better argument.
Yeah. No, it's very true. All right, here we go. What, Adam Stokes, apart from the standard, what's your favorite blockchain project at the moment?
Okay, so I love Bitcoin without any question whatsoever, because Bitcoin it's not just because it's the biggest and the best, it's because it actually is the backbone to democracy. It is the backbone.
It's the blue chip.
Yeah, it is the Mac Daddy, the number one. And the blue chip absolutely in investing. I mean, when you're investing in crypto, what other blue chip could you have? Now, some people say Ethereum or XRP. And look, I have a very wide portfolio. So I'm here, and I'm not shy to say this, I'm here to make money, but I'm not here to do it illegally or immorally. And once you actually accept that you're here to make money, you actually can let go of some of your biases. So before I answer the question beyond being Bitcoin, I actually spread my risk. I spread my risk over many chains, even chains that I don't necessarily personally like. It's not about me, it's about the market. And again, this is in my book. The market is what matters. It's not whether I like the color of a coin or the founder of a coin. What matters is that the market likes that coin. And if the market likes it and uses it, it has a future. So I say, do not discriminate against profits. Now, I would actually argue that XRP or Ripple was a coin or a company that I didn't really like in the beginning because yes, it can do many things, but primarily it was there to facilitate the payments of banks. And I don't like banks, but it's not about me. It's about the market. And if the banks do get through the SEC and the banks do choose to use another chain, I would argue that that XRP has a good chance of comfortably doing a 10x from where it is now, possibly a 50 to 100x. Now, the XRP army will say, no, it's definitely going to do a 1000x. But I say, how do you know? No one knows. No one can guarantee it.
You know, I totally concur with that. Initially, I was like, I don't want to touch this. It's just another bank. It's, you know, whatever. But if I was just trading on the stock exchange and Oracle came out with a new product, which is specifically a back end for international settlements for the banking sector, it was just a back end database for international settlement. And I went through their pitch. And I thought, well, it's interesting. I would probably buy that stock. And so, you know, if you take away your own biases, because I do have some biases there with XRP, I would definitely say, okay, well, I'm going to buy that stock if they're really doing that. Now, I don't care about the back end of what the hell banks use in the back end. I couldn't give a rat's fat. But really, if they're going to exist in the future, which I don't see them instantly going away. It's whether they're going to be there or be dead. Everyone knows it's going to be a slow curve down. So, and while that curve down is happening, they're going to have to be using some sort of technology in the back.
That's right. Don't let your emotions get in the way of making money. Again, I never compromised my values or the law, but when it comes to like XRP, like most Bitcoin maxis or Bitcoin enthusiasts, I should say, they didn't like XRP because it's like, well, why do we need XRP? Why do I need a bank when I can be a bank? And, you know, that statement is true. But two things can be true at the same time. And what's also true is banks have a massive part in the financial institution. Banks need to refine their processes. And if they can use a better system in the back end, and it happens to be XRP, there's a lot of money to be made off that. Now, that doesn't matter if I like it or not. What matters is banks hold trillions of dollars worth of trade, quadrillions if we're looking at the movement of money around the world every year, between payment rails and systems amongst themselves. And if this works, a small investment now can make a lot of money later. Now, do I like banks? No. Do I think we need banks? No, but it's not about me. It's about the market. So then we go into the smart coin. So I'd say, of course, I have to like Ethereum because Ethereum has proven itself in the market. The gas fees were a pain in the backside, but they are continually evolving. Now, second close to Ethereum, I'd have to say Cardano. I've got a very soft spot for Cardano. I think it's a classy project. I like all the educators, the very smart minds behind it. I like the way they've mapped it out. I like the way that they're being so instrumental in what they're doing. But to challenge my own thoughts, what I don't like is that they've been in the space for years and people still aren't really building upon it. I also really like Charles Hoskinson. I've met him once, but it was for a long time, as in I spoke to him for many hours. And I say he's kind of like the Steve Jobs of crypto. He was so good to speak to. He's such a smart guy, really good dude. But
and he's a nice guy, yeah.
Yeah, he's a really, really nice guy. But it doesn't matter if I like Charles Hoskinson. What matters is the market using Cardano yet? Well, evidently, it's at position 7 as I'm talking to you. It's at 38 cents. And the market's not really using it, but it's still there. So I'd actually say Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano, those are the three that I have a really soft spot for. But in the background, and I'm actually pivoting on my position here, for years, probably the last 2 years, I've spoken very highly of Binance. And the reason why I've spoken so highly of Binance is because I say it's the Google of crypto. It does almost everything. It's the dumb coin, the smart coin, the NFT coin, the programmable coin. It'll be moving into an AI coin. It's operating in so many markets. And it proved itself years ago, even before it was in, I think, even before the top 30. I'm saying this coin's got something big behind it. And it did. It went all the way up. It's currently, as I'm talking to you, it's a position 4 in the markets, the 4th biggest coin by market cap in the world. And it's been floating around the top 5 for at least the last 12 months. But I'm starting to pivot on my position a bit there, Josh. And this is, of course, why you have to remain agile in this space. 1 crypto year is the equivalent of 10 human years. This thing is moving so quickly. And just because Blockbuster was big for so many years, it doesn't mean Blockbuster is going to survive in the future. That doesn't mean Blockbuster is bad, illegal, or immoral. It just means that things change. When we look at Binance, in contrast, it's not that they're bad or immoral. I just actually think that because they're, ironically, Josh, I think it's because they're so good. I think they've been so attacked. Like, you look at what they've in Australia, we've lost all their staking rewards with them. So people have migrated from Binance back to CoinSpot so you can get staking rewards. The USA has pretty much decimated Binance US, and they've had to exit from there. And this Goliath in the crypto land, because in fact, and ironically, it's so good, it's coming under attack externally and internally. Externally with the regulators and the governments, and internally with everyone who's going to compete with it. So a long way of saying Binance is probably my 4th biggest coin. Before that would be Cardano, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. Every now and then roll the dice on some of the altcoins, and they make me some big money too.
Yeah, yeah, the infinite casino down there.
Yeah.
In those alts. But I mean, I have to admit, Binance has been a fairly good actor. They've been around for a while. They've stayed agile.
Yes.
They ship product. In terms of features, they have not lost any funds yet on a mass scale. And they've been attacked.
They have been attacked. Do you remember, sorry to interrupt, but do you remember, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, there was actually a hack. And CZ, straight away, he came out, I think it was about 3 years ago, he goes, "This has happened, it's my fault, I'm refunding out of my pocket everyone's money." And when that happened, I'm like, that's the company I want to work with. He actually refunded. Now, of course, he's one of the richest people on the planet, but it doesn't matter. His product broke and he took money out of his pocket, and he goes, "Everyone who got hacked, here's your money back and an apology." And I'm like, you know what? Cool.
What a guy.
And it's never happened since. And I really respect that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm amazed because they've also navigated the regulatory minefield of this space while being not really having a central country, but being in some places, and also not really truly, apart from that one situation that you just said then, but having such a fluid team and security is a very difficult problem. So I'm very impressed. I'm not the biggest fan of centralized authorities, which they are, but in terms of their track record, they've been pretty good.
And for what the market wants. So the market is still kind of addicted to the banking system because in many ways,
it's easy.
Yeah, that's right. You and I don't want banks, but it's like we have to live in reality. And the reality is the majority of the world does want banks because they actually don't know any different. And when it comes to centralized exchanges, governments want it because it's someone that they can attack and regulate. And newbies to the space, they love the big brother, if you will, of someone that you can write to a help center. But where Binance, I think, is in trouble is, yes, the attacks from the governments, but it's also actually quite a difficult site to use unless you know what you're doing. I give this analogy. I say, in Australia, if you want to use a simple site, you use something like CoinSpot. It's like learning how to fly a plane. You get into a little Cessna 176, a little bug smasher, a single engine, twin seat, side by side, pretty easy plane to learn how to fly. Whereas Binance is like a state-of-the-art jet fighter aircraft that can do missile jamming and air-to-air combat missions and air-to-air refueling and air-to-surface bombing and landing on aircraft carriers. And if you're new to flying and you try and get into this supersonic jet, you're probably going to kill yourself. And that's the only issue with Binance. With my clients, when they come into the space, I don't put them into the cockpit of Binance because it's too complicated. But
it is. I think that's a problem for them, actually.
Yeah, and even though they've got a lot of good training courses on there, like they've got pretty much videos for everything. Mate, it's so difficult. Even for me, I'm a crypto veteran with many years, and even I get like, oh man, what are we doing here? So many
Yeah.
too many products.
Too many. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Amazing. NFTs, Adam. I'm going to go there. Where, as NFTs were before NFTs, there was the thing of colored coins, and these were sort of non-fungible tokens, and Ethereum didn't exist, and then NFTs came out. Well, then Ethereum got launched, and I always had these artists at conferences and at meetups saying, "Oh, imagine we could put art on the blockchain." And I remember just thinking, "What are you talking about?" I don't, like, okay, yeah, we can put art on the blockchain. And sure enough, they bloody did. And the world loved it. Like, loved it. I think the orders of magnitude that the industry grew from these strange pictures on the blockchain, they're not even pictures on the blockchains, they're links to pictures on the blockchain. But nevertheless, it made the whole industry grow and new people come in. What do you think of it? Where do you think it's going? Is there, do you invest in these NFTs? Is that something of interest for you? Where do you draw the line with those?
A great topic, because the truth is that NFTs are here forever. And the first part to NFTs is the madness of art on NFTs. Now, when I say the madness of art, it's like, I can really relate to what you're saying, is that when people first came out and they said, we're going to digitize art, it's like, but I can just copy and paste it. Why would I buy a digital image when I could just copy, paste? But it actually comes down to, we live in a digital world and we understand digital scarcity. Now, I actually go to the gaming industry for this, because when you look at these things called skins, you're in a game and you want to have, I don't know, a pink gun, but pink guns aren't available, but I can buy pink guns. I'm actually showing my clout within this digital space that, hey, old Jono there has a pink gun that no one else has got. That's actually a good example of a form of NFT, of digital scarcity. The real value that we have to understand is, sure, you've got the value of utility, but you've also got the value of scarcity. And when we're living in a digital world where we can, in fact, show our clout, whether it's in the metaverse, that is definitely coming, and it will be on different levels. I think gaming is where it's going to be in its best. And in our last conversation, we said, the metaverse, if you reckon scams are bad now, we're going to get destroyed in the metaverse. Absolutely agree. And we're going to go back to park benches, but there will still be people who just live in the gaming metaverse forever. And the NFTs or skins within that are going to be off the charts. And that's why I think fashion brands get it when they're making fashion brand NFTs, like a Louis Vuitton handbag in the digital world. Well, why would I want that? Well, because some people live in the digital world and they want to show their clout, and they've got nothing else to spend the money on, or they just want to buy this. Now, when it comes to art, I really love the opportunity that you and I could make a piece of art now. I'm not worth much because no one knows me, but when I die, I then have value in that art. But that a commission can be handed on to someone for eternity. I really like that. I really like the concept of being able to program a piece of art that if you sell this, every time I sell it, or you sell it, or the next person sells it, I'm going to get a 10% commission. I think that is the essence of being fair in the market. Now, I don't have to set that commission. I could set it for 50% or 0%, but that's the freedom of the market. And if people don't want to buy an NFT, that's also the freedom of the market. But the reality is that the art space, although it will be around, I think, forever, one way or another, that's just really the tip of the iceberg. Everything is going to be an NFT. Land titles, birth certificates, driving licenses, graduation certificates, everything. It makes perfect sense that it has to be an NFT. And the reason why it has to be an NFT is because digital signatures as we do them now are not suffice. In business, when I sign a PDF document and I put my signature on the bottom of that page, even though it might be an Adobe Acrobat signature that I'm putting on that PDF document, it's still just an image, and there's no way of verifying that signature, not in the big picture. But if I can verify that document, whether it's a piece of art or a land title or a marriage certificate or a contract, through the power of NFTs, it just makes perfect sense. And then we go to a step further with putting NFTs in products with supply chains. Like, I look at how you can, like baby formula. You remember in China, there was a period where the Chinese, or bad Chinese people, were selling cement powder as baby formula.
Jesus.
Oh, mate, it was off the chart. So mothers were trying to do the right thing. They couldn't express, so they went and got baby formula. They gave the baby formula to the child. The child was drinking cement powder and the child was dead. Now, NFTs can indirectly save that. because we will be able to track through logistical supply chains and a QR code a tin of baby formula. When the mother pulls it off and she gets her phone and she scans a tin of baby formula and it says, this is Nan baby formula in this shop at this time. And they said, well, no, actually, that QR code was sold in Australia 6 months ago. You're holding onto a fake product. So whether it's certificates or physical items or in the digital world, NFTs are here forever. I've got some NFT digital art, but I've actually made more NFT digital art than I have actually purchased. None of it has sold. So anyone out there, if you'd like to buy some of my art, head over to the crypto.land and check out my NFT art studios. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's just fun exploring with taking a digital product, making it uniquely mine, and then having unique ownership of it, and then choosing to sell it or not, as well as those programmable commissions. Mate, there are some exciting times ahead.
No, I agree. I want to push back a little bit, just
Please.
to get you, let's have a debate. Things like deeds on property or university degrees. What I like about NFTs is that you can trade. For me, the NFT isn't that, like you mentioned with the copy paste thing. It doesn't matter about the copy paste. What I'm buying is the right to resell it. It's the right to resell this art. So yeah, you can copy and paste it. You can look at it. You can put it in a picture frame. You can print it out. You can do whatever you want, but you don't have the right to resell it mathematically. I can now go on OpenSea and I can sell it. What I think with like deeds of property, the problem with that is, in that case, you want the right to resell it. The problem is if you get a hack, let's say Zuckerberg puts all his Facebook shares into an NFTs on the blockchain, and he gets a hack and loses all those. Now, does he not own Facebook anymore because it's been hacked? And same with a house. If I've got my deed as a house, it's an NFT, I've got it secured in a wallet, somehow it gets hacked because I'm an idiot and I've put it up for collateral and DeFi and whatever else, and I've lost it. Not to say that putting up your house as a collateral is a bad thing, because it's stuff. But if you did it badly, how does that work with courts? And then that's something that does want to be traded. But then stuff that doesn't want to be traded, like my university degree, I don't want to ever trade that. I just want to sign a message to say this is true, and that's the end of it. So I would rather the university on their servers has a thing that I can sign a message to and say, look, I can prove that that's my message, and that's the end of it. I don't need to trade it as an NFT.
I love it, and I'll try my best to give two answers. So let's start with the university certificate. So when I lived in the UAE, I could become a doctor on paper for $500. So I could literally buy a PhD in name your topic, and they would produce, and Josh, I could pick the university that I went to. So I could become a doctor, a PhD in medical science from Boston University, if they offer that, or Harvard University in Boston, if they offer that course. And I could go to an employer and I show them the certificate, and it's got the wax stamp and it's got the numbers at the back and this and that. And there was actually no way of verifying that certificate unless they wrote to the university and said, was Adam Stokes doing this course at this time? And it's really slow and cumbersome. But if Harvard has a blockchain and they've given me a certificate with my unique QR code on it, or address, whatever you want, and I go to an interviewer and they just go blip and they go, yep, this guy's good. It's not so, I agree with you. It's not so much that I can sell on that certificate. It's that, in fact, the employer can verify it. They can verify that this piece of paper is, in fact, legitimate. Now we go to land titles. That's actually a really good argument. It's a really good argument because what happens, as we know with Bitcoin, we accept that if we put our keys in cold storage and that cold storage is lost, there's no one I can go and speak to. There's no one I can say, hey, I've lost my keys. Can you just refund my money or cancel it? It's gone. It is absolutely gone. Now, when we transfer that into ownership of property, I have done these thought experiments, and I would only think about it this way. I would say that if I owned the land title to my house, it goes back actually just to the certificate. I think the certificate that was printed, that's an NFT. But when it goes to maybe a bank and they say, hey, Adam, I'm not really thinking of the on-selling. I'm actually thinking of the verification, but I absolutely accept your point, Josh. Love talking to you on this stuff. I think about when I go to the bank and they say, what property have you got? And I can show these, even just pulling out my phone. I say, well, this is all that I own. They can cross-correlate my ownership of that property, whatever it is, through an open source blockchain that can't be hacked. But I absolutely agree that that in fact could create a situation where if someone gets my private keys, does that mean that they can kick me out of my house? And the only counter I could give to that is that there'd be a cross check. Well, I am Adam Stokes, and I do live on Smith Street, on Makeup Street, and this is my picture, and this is my fingerprint, and that's all an NFT. Now I've got Russian Spletkov going over here saying he's Adam Stokes. It's not his fingerprint. He's never been in the country before, because all these chains will speak to each other. It doesn't look right, even though he's got the keys. In fact, it's a hack. We're putting you under arrest. Don't know if that's a good explanation, but certainly with the qualifications, I just think about those certificates when I was in the Middle East. Mate, you could buy anything. And even actually when I was in Asia, you could buy a driver's license from anywhere in the world. So when you're pulled over by a cop, yes, they call back and they say, hey, do a license check on this. But if that was an NFT, or at least had a QR code, and they just scan it and they're like, yeah, this goes straight through. I just see that as a more efficient way of checking ownership or confirmation of the information that's physically presented to you against a decentralized database that can't be hacked.
You know, one of the things is that when I looked into why certain countries are so poor and why have they stayed poor for generations, I looked into the typical things like, well, they're lazy. These people are lazy. That's why they've stayed poor. And you know, they've got this sort of cultural, you know, stereotype of you know, they're just a lazy culture or whatever, or that they don't care about, or it's too corrupt. And what it I think boiled down to, the more I looked into why some of these countries stay developing, is that they have really bad land registries, and the registry is sitting at some dodgy ass government little shack with a computer. It's running on some shitty servers, and the president's son is in charge of that server, and the president's son decides this farm now belongs to me, or to my cousin. Boom. And then when the actual farmer goes to sell it, they're like, no, you don't belong. This is my brother. I don't know why some dodgy accent. But that the people not feeling secure in their ownership of a property causes most hardship in a country, because they're not willing to toil the land, to build the land, to make great farms, because they don't know whether in 5 years' time they're going to get kicked off by some warlord, or the registry just isn't true. They have no way of fighting the registry or anything like that. So I think, to your point, to sort of counter argument, my argument towards you is that the blockchain is like this ultimate third party to say, I can prove that I bought this. I've toiled the hell out of this. I've had it in my family for now 30 years. I'm selling it. The president's son, the president who got in power because he took power 2 years ago through force, and his son is sitting there at the computer, cannot change this record.
That's right.
And I think this will really alleviate a lot of poverty, because it will mean that people will invest in their land and title, rather than just saying, well, I bought this, but I'm not going to put any money or time in. I'm just going to, do the bare minimum on this land.
That corruption is such a huge piece. And this is where I see, of course, the blockchain saving many of us, because it's trustless. We can all agree to it. We can all agree that, this is what it says. And just because the president's brother come in, and that is in fact a really good example, because there was an experiment, I can't remember which one it was called, but it was basically where they showed when you don't own your land, you don't care for it as much. Now, of course, you might go and say, well, hang on, the indigenous people didn't own the land. They didn't have blocks of land, but in fact, they did own the land. They were part of the land. And that's why they preserved and loved their land so much. But when we go to a modern paradigm where it's like, well, if this block of land is not mine, I'm just going to get as many resources out of it as I can very quickly and just pillage it and run. But they showed that as soon as you start fencing off and you say, this is your acre of land, you actually take care of it. You actually invest in it. You actually toil the soil, which just rhymed, and you try and get some output of that land. And that output actually benefits everyone. And of course, when you don't own it, and it can be taken away from you at any time. Well, why bother? And yeah, this is where I'm looking at the positive side to blockchain, whether it's through NFTs or decentralized ownership on another blockchain. Ultimately, it will save us all. It will save us from corruption. It will save us from ourselves. It can save us from war. I'm very concerned about the collapse of the US dollar, where we can see that in my prediction, war is coming, mate. We are so close to war. And the reason why we are so close to war is because the money that we use around the world is just printed without limit, and it's backed by nothing but a war machine. But if we could back a money or an ownership or a title or a picture or something with trust and security and immutability, and, you know, as Andreas would say, something that is immutable, open source, borderless, censorship resistant, and available to everyone, then we all have something to fight for without violence. We've got to fight for it with energy and effort and trust, as opposed to distrust and, in some instances, laziness, when all the people at the top are controlling those at the bottom. And ultimately, as we can see with the money that we have at the moment and the systems that we have, they're pretty much backed with violence as opposed to mathematical code.
Yeah, it's a huge point, and you know, I hope you're wrong.
Me too.
I'm
Me
guessing
too.
you are too.
Yeah.
But I do, you know, I really hope that what I hope, Adam, is that the war machine looked at the last 3 years and went, holy smokes, the medical machine just took all of this money and we haven't seen shit, because somehow COVID also killed all terrorism. And so, right, we need a war. And because this war has made all of Europe buy such vast amounts of weaponry that it makes the American budget start to, you know, have runny eyes.
That's really powerful, because you know how you said the flu, if you will, and we've got to be careful. I can't even say the word, but you know, the pandemic stopped terrorism. But then I say Putin solved COVID. And the reason why I say Putin solved COVID is because look at the timeline. It was either the week or the day.
A week.
Yeah, the week. So the week that COVID was solved was the week that Putin invaded. And it's like, well, hang on a second. We literally, and I remember.
Can we have a break?
That's
Can
right.
we just have a summer? Can we
Just
give
me
have one summer?
And it wasn't. We literally went from one thing to the other, and it's like, man, surely you could not plan these things better unless you were perhaps right at the very top and had complete control over everything. It's like, well, that industry just got all the money, and now this industry is going to get all the money. And as you said, could we have just had one summer? Just give us one summer.
One summer of no fear.
Without a flu, without bombs falling, without some type of fear-mongering campaign. But, you know, how do we stop where we are now? How do you recover the US dollar? How do you save it? How do you stop the printing? How do you stop the inflation? And there's only two answers. One, you surrender it and say, you know what? We've been running this Ponzi scheme for a long time. We've had a pretty good run. We got filthy rich off it. We built the biggest military in the world. But the gig is up. Okay, handing over to someone else. We're going to adopt the hard money. We're all going back to gold, or we're going to Bitcoin, or a combination of both, or we're going to turn off the printing machine. That's just never going to happen.
They're going to print more. They're going to go like, let's go out with a blaze of glory.
Of course.
Start the printers, boys.
It's a supernova. Just before the star goes out, it burns its brightest. And that is the US dollar. It's going to pump as much as it can. It's going to squeeze every last bit of juice out of it, decimating economies globally in the process. And the very last part to that, you got to go to war. You have to go for war. And then,
well, if they're clever, they will do the supernova and buy as many resources as possible to become a socialist state in that moment. Like, buy as much oil so they can give everybody oil, buy as much, but they won't, because it's all just elitists looking after themselves.
Of course.
And when they go full socialist, it'll fully collapse anyway, because socialism never works.
Always collapses.
Least they can do is try to use all that wealth that they'll print out of nowhere to sort of buy as much resources to be self-sufficient for a couple of months.
A couple of months, exactly. But of course, as the supernova burns out and you've got those precious resources, if you're the enemy, would you sell it for that worthless crap? And that's why now, as the economy is moving so quickly to waking up, to saying, you know what, It's all over. I'm not going to accept this debt anymore. I'm not going to accept this fake money. You want to buy this oil and food? I'll take gold. I'll take Bitcoin. I'll take steel or iron ore or real resources. But I'm not taking your fake funny money anymore. You already owe us. You already owe us $6 trillion. And now you want us to lend you another $6 trillion, which is, you haven't even paid back the last $6 trillion. Oh, no, she'll be right.
Well, I mean, this is like I saw that in 2008 with or just thereafter when Greece was going broke, and it was the opposite though. It was the opposite of that. It was where Greece was giving across acropolises and islands and things, real assets, just so the ECB could print more debt for them.
Tragic.
Tragic. You think you don't understand the scam? Yeah, like,
and you can never get them back.
Scam with that deal. And that's the sort of deal that, like, I don't want to shield Trump, but Trump is the art of the deal kind of guy, and he would just not make that deal. He wouldn't say, "I'm not giving you my rare assets for some crap you're printing out of thin air."
It's just all I'm hoping for, Josh, is a world where we can just all get along.
Yeah, and with that, thank you very much, Adam Stokes. It's a pleasure. How do people get in touch? How do they subscribe to your channel? Where do they go?
Epic conversation. Find me so first of all, Adam Stokes on YouTube, or head over to Adam_Stokesy, STOKESY on Twitter. Buy my book, 28 Pro Trader Tips, The Art of Trading on Amazon. Or if you want to do anything crypto safely and you're not sure, I've made a very simple and secure site called thecrypto.land. That's www.thecrypto.land. Josh, it's been a real pleasure. We always go on random tangents together, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work with you. And if I can just give a shout out to the Standard.io, the reason why I love your company so much is because it's a new way of doing money. That is, we're looking for something to peg value against. It can't be against the dollar. But if you choose to peg your value against the dollar or against Bitcoin or against gold, bags of wheat or bottles of water, the Standard.io creates that opportunity where that can be done. It's a democratization of money and true value, and I'm very supportive of your company and glad to do anything I can to promote it in a positive light.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. We're about to launch we're testing the last bits of the smart contract. We're getting the last bits of the front end done now. I'm really excited because I've been chomping at the bit. We've been going for like a year and just writing and R&D, so it's very exciting. Adam, thank you very much for being on. I can't wait to have another conversation with you. There's always like you said, everything's moving so quickly, so it's easy to jump on a show with you and talk about this stuff because there's so much to talk about every time we meet up.
Thanks so much, Josh. My pleasure.
Cheers, Chad.